What is up? Welcome to this week's episode of Lambgoat's Vanflip podcast. I am joined by Nate Garrett of doom metal, heavy metal band Spirit Adrift. And you guys, I don't know when exactly this podcast will come out, but it'll definitely come out prior to the new album, At The Gallows, which comes out on the 18th of August through Century Media, which is going to follow up your 2020 album that you guys released, Enlightened in Eternity. Is that what it was?
Nailed it, dude.
Man,
Nailed the
dude.
whole thing. Doom metal, heavy metal band. That's what's up.
Success. You don't know how many times, Nate, I've flubbed my way through the first 30 seconds of this bad boy.
Same.
Yeah. Cool. Well, welcome to the show, Nate. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, dude. Yeah. Voice been getting to work out. I was just talking to a guy in Australia about riffs. And before that, I was recording like a YouTube video about riffs. And this is what I do on my days off, my spare time when I'm not trying to write riffs. I'm fucking talk about them all day long.
Right. Not to get too sidetracked right off rip, but like when you say your days off, do you have I try to kind of inquire if people have like a day job or if rocking the country 24/7 is your permanent gig. But you know, I like to like shed some light on like, hey, glamorous rock star life is not so glamorous. You may have to like bag groceries whilst you're not touring the world.
I got hustles, man. I haven't had like a boss. Man, probably since like 2017. The last like real jobs I had, I was working corporate AV actually for this company that doesn't even exist anymore. And I was wearing like a suit and tie. Couldn't have any facial hair. Your hair couldn't touch the top of your ear. And yeah, suit and tie, like no matter what time of year, at a Hilton resort in Phoenix, Arizona. And then I went from that to doing like freelance AV work for a friend of mine. And dude, I was Ubering at the same time as well, but I got to work like so many insane shows in Phoenix. I worked the last Motorhead show in Phoenix,
Wow.
the last Merle Haggard show in Phoenix, the last Charlie Daniels show in Phoenix. I got to work Skinnerd, Toto, Huey Lewis and the News, Sammy Hagar, like dude, just so much cool shit. And then I was playing in Gatecreeper and Spirit Adrift at the time.
Right.
And it reached a point where my wife was like, dude, we don't even really need this money that you're making doing this other shit right now. So why don't you just go for it? Like, go for the music thing. And I made a promise to myself internally that if I was going to do that, I would never put the financial burden of anything on her. Like if I had to put a damn ski mask on and go get it, like I'm paying the bills, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, or at the very least we're splitting them. And yeah, it was a major leap of faith, but yeah, man, that's a very long-winded no. I don't have a boss. I do whatever I got to do to fucking get by,
cool. Yeah.
you know?
And kudos to your wife for, you know, being on board to letting you do that in general, because clearly that's not something that, you know, every woman or every partner for that matter is going to be able to allow their better half or their other half to do. So
100%.
kudos.
I love her, man. That's why I don't fuck with you hoes on tour, man. Stay out of my face.
Yeah, just because he's wearing no shirt while shredding guitar does not mean that he's available. All right, ladies, back the fuck up. So yeah, that's interesting that you had to wear like your hair a certain way, no facial hair, and you're also like in at the time, you know, two metal bands, one Gatecreeper and then Spirit Adrift, and you just have to have like the clean cut look, you're like the clean cut shredder up there.
Yeah, man, and I was wasted at work like every fucking day, hungover or wasted. I was in a band called Take Over and Destroy, and the last tour that I ever booked myself was in 2012, and so I was booking it in end of 2011, beginning of 2012. I would show up to work just like, dude, Chase from Gatecreeper told me that one morning we were like partying somewhere. He was sober at the time, but he said I got up out of like wherever we had crashed, went in the parking lot, opened the trunk of my car, pulled out a bottle of Jim Beam, put my suit on, chugged a bunch of Jim Beam, and went to work. I don't even fucking remember doing that. And I would go on corporate time. I'm not saying that's a good thing to do, but
No, no, no.
that's where I was at, dude. And on corporate time, just like fucking miserable at this shitty job, sitting in the office, like booking a tour for my band on the clock and
Yeah.
like not doing shit that I was supposed to do. And I had that job for a while, man, until the company got bought out, you
Yeah.
know?
They had to do some due diligence, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we don't necessarily need these particular individuals."
Yeah.
Yeah, I was experiencing a little like that's the thing about corporate world. There is a good and a bad part of it. I think good is, you just show up. Basically, you could basically camp out for a long time, and not to say that I haven't done that because I do Lambgoat full time now, but there were times where I spent all day in my office or cubicle just Lambgoating, and yeah, I'll get that to you whenever. I'll get that to you whenever,
Respect.
and
Respect, dude.
never really got turned around. It took them like 9 months to figure that out, but hey, by then I was already set. So yeah, I say that to say don't shit on all the corporate jobs. They're there for a reason. You can quietly quit everybody, you know. So anyway, let's get back to the music. You have Ghost at the Gallows coming out in a week or two, depending on whenever this comes out, or could be, definitely won't be in a month because we'll already be past that. So in 3 weeks to maybe tomorrow, you never know. Ghost of the Gallows comes out. So what was with the quick turnaround between the two albums? Was it just something that, because obviously you probably wrote a bulk of the other album prior to COVID, I would assume, right?
Yeah, man, I've just never stopped writing. Ever really since I picked up a guitar. I've never stopped writing. I started playing at 13 years old. Played my first show probably when I was 14 or 15, and I just never stopped writing. I got sober in 2015, and that was kind of the catalyst for this whole deal. Songs just started coming, and they just didn't stop. And yeah, that thing we put out last year, not really an album. There was like covers on it and 2 new songs. And then 2021, we put out an EP, and all of that stuff started March of 2020 when my wife and I moved to Texas. And that was kind of like a getting back to my roots thing. I grew up in the South. I was born in Florida. Yeah, hell yeah, represent. Grew up in Oklahoma and moved to Arkansas, where I sort of like cut my teeth learning how to tour and learning how to like really seriously pursue this heavy metal shit or whatever, playing in bands. So moving back to Texas back in early 2020, I really felt like I was getting back to like my upbringing. We're in like a pretty rural area outside of Austin, and when the lockdowns hit, I just started writing. Dude, that's just how I deal with whatever's going on. There's certain things I got to do to like keep my shit together, and one of them is picking up a guitar and writing. So that's what I did, and I wrote for 2-3 years, man. And like I said, 3 of those songs ended up being Forge Your Future. 2 of those songs ended up on 20 Centuries Gone, which came out last year.
Yeah.
The first 2 songs on that. And other than that, I probably demoed, dude, between like 20 and 30 songs, like totally finished. And then a lot of those I just threw out, or I would just take like the best riff of one song and combine it with like other really good stuff I had going on. And yeah, tweaked it from March 2020 up until we went into the studio in September of last year. What fucking year is it? Last year, I guess.
So 22.
Yeah, and that's when we had a 5-week tour with Crowbar.
Yeah, which I saw you on that was a Hammerhead one.
Oh,
right?
yeah, hell yeah. And then we had a break, and then a 3-week tour with COC. We tracked the new album in that break.
Oh,
that
nice.
was like the only opportunity that we had to do it.
Nice. Yeah, I did catch you on that Crowbar tour last year. I looked it up. It was about a year ago almost. It was shortly after we took over Lambgoat. So, that was interesting because the younger guys, what was their names? I don't know their last names, but the brother trio, Hammerhead, they they opened your show up, and that was quite unique. I was like, what's Mini Gojira doing on tour?
Oh
with
yeah,
their dad?
that must have been a different tour because
It was you and Crowbar.
Yeah, it was just us and Crowbar
Was it?
on our tour. Yeah, but I know they did tour with that Hammerhead band.
They may have just been on like 3 dates. That may be what I'm thinking. But yeah,
The
I looked it up.
Youngins.
Yeah, I looked it up, and you guys. I mean, that's the last time I saw Crowbar, so you definitely were there. But yeah, so back to the new album. Not to get off topic, which I told you before, we could get off topic easily.
All
Um,
good.
yeah, so back to the new album. You're just a riff writing machine and everything like that. How much of the album is written by you, and how much do the other members collaborate, or do they just kind of just like not hired guns, but just like take the input and then just regurgitate it out?
Yeah, I write all of it.
Okay.
I've written all of it since the beginning. Jeff, our former guitarist, wrote a couple of riffs. He wrote a really good riff in Angel and Abyss, that song from Divided by Darkness. And he kind of like tweaked a couple of little things on Curse of Conception. But other than that, it's always been like I write it at home, I demo it at home, program the drums just so that whoever's playing drums can like hear the song.
Yeah.
But I've always told everybody in the band, man, like contribute as much or as little as you want. Take on as much responsibility as you want, contribute musically as much as you want. Our drummer, who I met upon moving to Texas, Mike Fury, this dude, like, he really took that to heart. Like, he's a OG. Like, the dude plays in a lot of hardcore bands. He's kind of known for that. He's known in that scene. He plays in MOD with Billy Milano.
Okay.
But he grew up like his dad, Herman, shout out Herman, was taking him to concerts when he was 4 years old, taking him to see like Pink Floyd,
Oh yeah.
Van
Wow.
Halen, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Metallica, Queensryche, all that shit. And so Mike and I grew. We have like the exact same musical vocabulary when it comes to all that stuff, all the like the foundation
Mm-hmm.
of hard rock and heavy metal, getting off into extreme metal too. But the guy just like took my songs and injected like old school stadium metal drummer attitude and
Nice.
skill
Yeah.
into it. I can't even, I played drums on the early stuff. I can't touch what Mike does. Like, he was born to be a drummer. He's got everything I love about dudes like fucking Tommy Aldridge
Mm.
and Benny Appice from Black Sabbath and Dio.
Yeah.
Those are like our favorite. We have like pretty much all the same favorite drummers, and I'm not able to do that stuff, and I can't even think to write some of that stuff. And he really just like elevates the whole thing. And Tom Draper, our guitar player, he's played for Carcass. He's
Mm-hmm.
played for Angel Witch. He's in a band with Matt Harvey from Exhumed called Pounder, or he was when I met him. I don't think they're still active. He's in another band now called Hands of Goro with a couple of heavy hitter dudes from the Bay Area. The dude shreds. He's like, even if he wasn't in my band, like even before he was in the band, I kind of consider him to be like one of the best guitarists in hard rock and metal
Mhm.
right now. He's just like exactly what I like to see and hear in a guitar player. So I'm really grateful that he's in the band, and we split lead guitar on the album.
Cool.
Every Spirit Adrift record, I play rhythm guitar, bass, vocals, obviously. And then on this one, Mike's playing drums, and me and Tom split the lead guitar. And, I've had a few moments in my life where I really improved my guitar playing. Like one of my old bands had like a ZZ Top cover set for Halloween, and learning the intricacies of that was like
Yeah.
greatly elevated my technique and my style and understanding of guitar. Another pivotal moment I can pinpoint is trying to keep up with Tom on the fucking solos. Like,
Yeah.
I had to practice and play a lot, so
And
it's
you
cool,
play,
man.
but how much do you play? Or I mean, how much of the day, 7 days a week? How much of the day do you have a guitar in your hands?
Lately, not at all, man.
Okay. Because you're
Well,
saying
no,
that
that's a lie.
you're saying you have to like practice and improve, and I I assume that guitarists, especially like in bands and whatnot, fiddle on the stick a little bit more than the usual person would. So like when you say you have to really crack the whip and like break it down and learn some stuff, it seems, I don't know, you've been playing since you were 13 years old. it's decades been long since passed between then. I'm not trying to call you out on your age or anything like that. But like it would seem like you'd be pretty much a relatively great guitar player, especially because you're in more of a metal band too. So it's not humbling. It's almost like you're humbling yourself when you have to like learn this stuff. But again,
Yeah,
you're learning others like way different parts and way different songs.
Dude,
so.
ego is like the enemy of any sort of creativity or like having an overinflated or warped sense of ego is one of the most like toxic fucking things you can do. And Glenn Tipton's one of my favorites of all time, and that dude made the album British Steel. He could have easily just been like, all right, I'm good. Obviously, I'm good enough at guitar. I made fucking British Steel. I'm a multi-millionaire. Everyone in the world fucking loves me. I'm famous. I can have pretty much everything I want. And he never, ever, ever, ever had that attitude. Like, compare his playing on British Steel, which is phenomenal. One of the best metal guitar players in the world at the time. But then, like, look at Painkiller, which came a little bit later. It's like he leveled up, like, exponentially between those two records, even having, like, basically accomplishing success by, like, every possible metric, and still in that position didn't allow himself to be like, to rest on his laurels and be like, clearly I'm good enough at guitar, So I'm always trying to get better, dude, every day. And I say lately I haven't had a guitar in my hand all that much, but it's not really true. I've actually, the past couple weeks since we got back from Europe, I've been writing like really sick riffs. Like I just showed up out of the blue, which is nice because, for the past 3 years, I was working on all those songs that became the EP and the 2 songs and then the record. I've been, especially the past 2 years, I've been like hyper focused on a record. So when I'm working on a record, I have a guitar in my hand every single day because I'm either demoing at home, or I'm tweaking something, or I'm writing a solo for this part, or I'm writing a lead to go over this part, or I have a riff in my head or whatever. So I'll have a guitar in my hand like every waking moment, getting ready to make a record, getting ready to tour. I'll always do a couple weeks of like really woodshedding, making sure I'm going to crush it on tour. And like having come back from Europe, I was wanting to break, and I took a little bit of a break. But
so like when you're playing like on tour and stuff like that, you're not really playing the guitar, you're not really practicing a lot on tour. You're just playing the time that you're scheduled to play, and then is that mainly the time that you're actually hands on the instrument? And
100%, yeah, because like we don't tour on a tour bus. I know like Cannibal Corpse, when Pat was in the band, Pat O'Brien, that fool, like he had a guitar in his hand. If he's awake, that motherfucker has a guitar in his hand. That's why he's so good.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, like how often you have it in hand or whatnot. But so I guess my next question is, when you're not writing or whatever, and you're trying to elevate one's skill level, what goes into that? Is it like just let me just knock these scales out, get these rudiments out, or is it like you set your sights on a specific task or whatever and nailing that riff or that solo or whatever it is? Like, how do you elevate your playing?
It just depends what you're trying to improve. I have pretty damn good timing, especially for a guitarist, because my first instrument was piano, and I started learning piano when I was 3 years old, and that involved playing along to a metronome a lot.
Yeah.
And I went to competitions and shit like from age 4 to age 13 until I was finally like, dude, I never really liked piano. I'm so grateful that I did that now.
No kid loves piano, man.
Dude, it's so lame. And when I heard Jimi Hendrix, I was like, I'm never fucking playing a piano ever again.
No girl's
like,
gonna ever look at me.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix would never fuck with a stupid piano.
Hey, but now you get on you tickle the ivories, and everyone's like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's weird how that changed. Yeah. But yeah, so my timing's pretty good. Like, but if you were gonna work on your timing, just hit a metronome, like pick a riff to play or a warm up or whatever. I have different like little warm ups I'll do. Some of them I read about back in the day in Guitar World magazine, like Dimebag has a really good right hand warm up just to loosen things up. Zach Wild has a really good left hand warm up that's kind of actually synchronizing your picking hand and your fretting hand.
How did you reading those articles from like Guitar World? I would assume you're reading them from Guitar World. You're not like
Yeah,
watching
back
a
when I was
video
like
back in the day. Yeah.
14. No, no, no.
How
I
did
had a
you?
subscription.
But how did you like correlate the actual workout to doing it in real life? I mean, again, like are you reading it, or do you just have like little photos where like the hands like this, then like this?
They would tab it out, some of it.
Okay, okay. Well, I know
Yeah,
that they would
yeah.
tab it out, but like maybe like how your hand moves, or like what you should be doing with things that aren't like in tablature or whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't really have like I
A
think I
visual
had
representation is what I'm.
one
Yeah.
I had like one VHS at one point of just like guitar basics, because I'll never forget when he showed how to play a G chord. I was like, there's no way that's right because my hand doesn't do that. And then I was like, if we want to talk about humbling, I was like, shit, that is how you do a G chord. I got a long, this is like not that
Yeah.
easy. Um, but no, yeah, I would just try to figure it out as best I could. And sometimes there would be stuff to listen to. Like some of Zach Wild's riffs are sort of based around his warm ups, and like Dimebag Darrell's right hand warm up actually became one of the riffs on that 13 Steps to Nowhere song from Great Southern Trendkill. That's
Mhm.
his right hand warm up for years. And he was just like, shit, I'll just put that in a song. It's pretty cool. But I mean, that's warming up. Like to actually level up, um, a lot of times I'll like pick something really hard to play that I like. Like when I was younger, Cells of, I don't know how to say it, Cells of Charon by the
Mhm.
Scorpions. It's from the Taken by Force album. Uh, there's a solo on the beginning of that song, Uli John Roth. And I was like, that's the coolest and hardest sounding thing I've ever heard. And I've looked up the tabs, and over like the course of weeks, I just learned how to play it and worked it up to speed. So you can do stuff like that. There are just all kinds of shit. And
Yeah.
now with YouTube, there's like, you can look up anything. Like
Yeah.
lately, I've been trying to figure out how, like what scales and techniques I'll be using if I was like some hired gun in Nashville, just to kind of branch out of like I do the pentatonic scale and I do the Phrygian mode, and that's it. And they don't really use either one of those that much in like
Mhm.
traditional country guitar playing. So just anything and everything, man. Watching documentaries,
Right, right.
listening
No,
to music.
I get it.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to pick the brains so the youngsters know that, back in the day you were reading stuff and fucking trying to
reading with
figure it
my own
out.
eyes.
So, you can, I'm assuming since you did, your piano training at a young age and everything like that, um, and you're classically trained to like read music too. So you can read guitar music and tab it out. Or is that just
Not
something that,
really.
okay,
No,
this is
I
piano?
can read music a little bit if I got a piano in front of me,
Gotcha.
although it's been a really long time.
Right.
If you put sheet music in front of me and a guitar, I have no idea what's going
Ah,
on.
okay.
Like I could, it would take me forever, but I could eventually be like, okay, that's a E and this is a E here,
But
but
like if someone throws off some chords or anything like that, like a name of a chord, you'd be like, oh yeah, bing, this hand, bing, yeah. So
yeah,
you know
and
that
it's like
much.
I can learn shit by ear instantaneously.
Okay,
That's
okay.
always been my biggest gift that I have literally I think I was born with that, and I think you're either born with that or not. It's like drummers and their sense of timing. You either got it or you
Yeah.
don't. So I think my biggest gift is my ear, just listening to something and picking it up that way.
Not mine. I do not have that.
But tabs, dude, for guitar, all I do is tabs. There's no
Right,
sheet
right.
music.
Okay,
There's no real
okay.
theory. I don't know. I know the basic chords, but if you start getting into suspended this
Right.
and
No, no, I'm not trying to say
seven
like you
that,
know
yeah,
all of them, but like there's
yeah,
I,
hell
I've
no.
I've spoken to enough people in bands and out of bands that I get mind blown when like people are like, yeah, I don't know how to read or know any of the chords. I just know it sounds like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like people who learn at a very young age before the internet, before they knew they could look stuff up, they had like a resource guide or anything like that. They were just like making noises with their guitar, and then like,
Yeah,
hey,
that's
that's
rad.
worked. Yeah. So a lot of
Yeah.
bands that a lot of people listening to this, a lot of bands that you listen to probably don't have a classically trained or a trained guitarist in the mix.
Yeah, I mean it can be as much of a hindrance as it is like
Right.
an aid,
Mm-hmm.
like Jimi Hendrix claims he didn't know theory. What I'll claim is I know enough and use enough theory just to achieve what I need to achieve, and I don't know any more or less than that. Like,
Right.
if you start thinking too much, your music's gonna be lame as fuck. Like, it's all
Yeah.
about feeling. It's all about feeling. That's it.
So and then when do you know a song is done? When is a Spirit Adrift song done?
Well, they're never done.
Well, when's the feeling? When's the feeling captured?
Well, there's like a lot of different stages to a song. I mean, all of mine for the most part start with a riff.
Yeah.
And these days, like, my standards have gotten so high for myself that the only riffs that I keep are ones that are like, they hit me. It's like they were already there. I was just doing an interview about this a second ago, actually. And it's an instantaneous delivery of a riff, and there's no thought involved at all. There's no, and if a riff shows up that's worth keeping, I don't tweak it ever. It just comes and it's perfect, and it's like I found it and it was perfect as it appeared, and I don't ever have to think about it again. Because like in the past, write stuff and it requires a little bit of work and intellectual, like, figuring out of where this should go and that and this and that. And I stopped letting myself even do that, because all of my favorite stuff and all the most magical stuff is that like instantaneous, spontaneous burst of like inspiration. So that's how a riff is formed. And then, a song's done when I can listen to it start to finish and there's nothing that bothers me about it, even subconsciously.
Right.
Even subconsciously. It's like I do the opening track of the new album, Give Her to the River. I had the intro, and then I wrote a whole like 7-minute song. And I'm like, God, I love that intro. And, I worked on it for like a year.
Just the intro or the song?
The song.
Okay.
The intro was good from the jump. There we go again. Like, from the jump, the intro was good, and I never changed it. The rest of the song, I was working on it for a year, trying to convince myself, like, oh, that's good. That's a cool song. And there's just something in me. I don't know what it is, but it's like not letting me. There's something gnawing at my subconscious,
Yeah.
And oddly enough, like, I was kind of just like forgetting about that song, like, fuck it, whatever. Like, we're getting close to making the album, and there was a thunderstorm out here. We live out in the woods. We got all these pine trees, and a fucking bolt of lightning hit this pine tree right in front of the window in front of me. And it was the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. And I saw Motorhead a bunch, and it was like way louder than that. I thought the windows were going to blow out of the house. And the second that happened, that whole song like rewrote itself. The intro stayed, but that whole song, the opening song to the album, I was like, what the fuck? I was in the kitchen, actually, and I ran in here, grabbed a guitar, played the whole rest of the song. It's like I said, a 7-minute song. So yeah, I think my standard now is like, I'm only gonna record stuff on albums that hits me like that, because that's the shit that's magical, man.
Right. So like, what this? You witnessed this tree blow up, basically. I'm assuming, lightning hits the tree, it kind of has like a little reaction.
It's still there.
Yeah.
It's like dead, because it gets killed all the way to its roots.
Right.
And you can actually see like the crisscrossy white of where the lightning bolt like traveled through this tree. It's still over there, man.
So you're watching that transpire in real time, and then you're like, oh, I gotta fucking go downstairs and get the guitar.
Yeah, I think there was a delay, actually. I think that happened, and then some time passed, and I was in because my wife, I remember, wasn't home when that happened, and she was home when I got hit with the song. So it was like a delayed reaction. It took some time for like the magic shit to
run through the ground,
through the dimensions.
Yeah, you had to run through the electricity and the power had to run through the ground, get grounded, and come back up. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Speaking of which, is there a part looking back on any Spirit Adrift songs that you're like, that make you cringe?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when Rob Halford says that he listens to his own stuff and cringes, I think it's safe to say that if you don't, there's probably something wrong with you.
Yeah, I would
You
assume
know?
most people cringe. They'd have to, because depending, you've released stuff for over a decade now. So who
Not
you are?
quite a decade. 2016 was the
Okay.
first stuff. Yeah, approaching a decade. Yeah,
In Spirit Adrift
was
or in general?
was Spirit Adrift.
Well,
I mean,
I'm
I've been.
saying in general.
Oh, in
Releasing
general, is
music.
there?
You're releasing music over a decade.
Yeah, bro. Well,
So
if we count all that,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
cringing until Spirit Adrift started.
So were you cringing around in the Gatecreeper time too? Because what was the idea for Spirit Adrift, just to focus, or not focus, but to like do something more along the lines of what you would like to put out as like a representation of your musical prowess or your?
No, I love Gatecreeper, man. And actually,
Well, I'm not saying you wouldn't, but I'm just saying it's not
Yeah, yeah.
not doesn't align completely with what you would like to showcase to the world.
that might be accurate. Yeah, I started Spirit Adrift before I was in Gatecreeper. A lot of people don't realize that, and recorded like the EP and the first record all solo, played everything. And after, right around the time I was recording the first album, this was like October 2015. I got asked to join Gatecreeper. I was super tight with all those dudes. Um, but no, I didn't write very much for Gatecreeper. I co-wrote maybe like 4 songs with Chase in that band, and then Eric and Chase did most of the writing. So I don't know. It's different when it's not your baby, and I wasn't like the
You're just like
primary. Yeah, I was just a guy, so I was like a fan. I was just a fan, and it was cool to like experience that from a different perspective, where I was just able to like enjoy playing the music and listening to the music without being attached to it.
Yeah.
As a creator, so it's just like it's a totally different thing. I don't cringe about any of that stuff, but early Spirit Adrift stuff, like I was learning on the job, man, because I didn't have any intention of this being a band. I didn't have any intention of like releasing records or getting record deals or going on tour or any of that. I was just like getting it out, man. So there's like a lot of vulnerability there. There's a lot of imperfection there because there wasn't any preparation. I did practice the drums a lot just because I had to get my chops back up for that. But I wasn't like sitting around learning vocal techniques or figuring out how I was going to approach the vocals or anything like that. I did that on the recordings. So like first, I don't know. I think the first thing I can listen to where I'm not cringing at all at the vocals is probably like Divided or Enlightened in Eternity. And I think Enlightened's when I really hit my stride as a singer.
And that's not that long ago.
Yeah, and I just kept getting better. Forge Your Future, I was like, damn, that's a good singer. And then the new album, I feel really, really good about the vocals. And I'm sure eventually there'll be stuff even on the new album that makes me cringe. But, at the same time, I don't listen to my own music. Again, if you're sitting around listening to your own music, you should probably be fucking locked up because there's something off about that, dude.
I will go back, and I haven't been in a band in like almost 20 years, right? So I'll go back and listen to our shitty demo once every like couple years. But I will say that I've grown to accept it and like it more over the years. I'm like,
That's
you know
awesome,
what?
man.
This was fucking decent for being 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, you're gonna get what you're gonna get, so you can love it or you can fucking try to struggle and whatever. You get what you get, so learn to love it. And
and you're listening to your stuff. You're playing it live. You're playing it live.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
like you're not.
Self-acceptance is very important, man.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is, and I'm not like, I might hear some shit and cringe, but I'm far from embarrassed. I don't give a fuck, man. That's what it was. It's beautiful. It's a record of where I was at that time. And same with your stuff, man. It's a record of where you were at that time.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to think about that. My music anymore. Moving on. So back to the Spirit Adrift stuff. So you weren't really like, you start Spirit Adrift kind of as like a solo kind of not a goof project, but a solo project that you're kind of just, fiddling with yourself. So when do you start realizing like you put some stuff out, I guess, online, do you let a lot of people know, or you just put it out and then like your friends know about it or people within your circle know about it? When do you start like realize like, oh, people from outside my circle are fucking with this and like, oh, I maybe should put a record out. And, oh, I got signed. Like, how does that start?
Well, I did it ass backwards, man. I like made the records first.
Right.
So I had these songs, I demoed them, and I was gonna go record with this dude. And my friend Bob caught wind of this whole thing. He's very well known and well loved in Phoenix. His name's Bob Hogue, and I had recorded some other stuff with him, and he's real good. He was like, dude, just come track it with me, like whatever, we'll figure out the money and this and that. So I tracked the stuff with him, and then yeah, I remember like burning CDs. It's like writing different stuff on it, and I mailed like physical copies of CDs to a couple people. Oddly enough, like Wino,
like fans or like record
dudes,
label
friends,
okay.
People, friends, and like Wino, believe it or not, from the Obsessed and Saint Vitus and everything, legend.
Mm-hmm.
He and I became pretty good friends at some point, probably 2012, the chaos year of my life. And he came through town. So he's one of the first dudes that ever heard Spirit Adrift, and he was so cool about it. He texted me and was like, "Dude, this shit's awesome." I just saw him in France too, man. Still good buzz with him. So people were kind of hearing it, and I was getting really good feedback. And when Wino's telling you he likes your stuff, that's kind of like, okay, well, I guess there's something here. So then I started sending it out to different contacts at labels. Sent it to Metal Blade. I think I sent it to Relapse. Probably some labels that I didn't even realize were defunct, like Kamado.
Yeah,
put
yeah.
out like the just first Sword album.
Get
and
a return to
Saviors.
sender. Be like, oh, that's
yeah.
thing.
Put it like Season of Mist. I sent.
Okay.
And they were interested actually for a while, but my other band was in talks with Prosthetic at the time, so I ended up going with Steve at Prosthetic, and yeah, it just went from there, man. Records came out, and then like Walter, who was running Roadburn Festival in the Netherlands, reached out to me and was like, "Do you have a band? This is fucking killer. I want you guys to play." And I lied, straight up fucking lied to him. I was like, "Yep, got a band, been practicing. We sound amazing.
We are tight."
He was like, cool. Yeah, oh yeah, dude, really been working on it with these guys. And that's what made me put a band together, because I was like, it's, especially at the time, I didn't have I don't have an accurate view of myself. Nobody does.
Right.
And I'm like people tell me I'm hard on myself. I don't think I'm hard on myself. I just think I have very high standards. I think that's a little bit different, but it can definitely like skew my perception of myself, and maybe I don't give myself enough credit. And you know, people like me, all of us, man, we struggle. Like I got bullied and shit growing up, and all sorts of like horrible shit I had to deal with that really permanently warped my self-esteem, you know. And when I got sober, I heard a phrase like, I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, and I was like, shit, man, that's me. So I couldn't really gauge if this shit was good or not, or if I had done a good job. But when Wino is like, yo, this is good, and the guy that runs Roadburn is asking me to play, just objectively I could understand like, okay, this must not suck, you know. And put the band together, and it grew from there and just like took on a life of its own.
Yeah. The doom metal, like the doom metal tag that you guys kind of are under, it's the reason why I said doom metal and heavy metal is because it's not necessarily like kind of like your typical doom metal, like your funeral doom metal type sound. It is kind of like a more palatable sound. Like that's why and I hate the term heavy metal. I'll throw that out there, because heavy metal is so like, that's not a good term. But when I'm thinking heavy metal, I'm thinking like not radio rock, right?
The origins of the genre, man.
Right.
That's what it was called.
Yeah, it's not radio rock, but
it's
it's a little heavier than mainstream radio rock. It's not metal, you know, whatever you consider metal, but it's in that, it moonlights in there, and it's a very palatable doom metal record, kind of, you know. And where did you kind of decide to kind of take that route?
I don't think there was a decision, man, honestly. You know, my DNA is my DNA, and the way that I got into metal was like I happened to hear, or I happened to fall in love with Black Sabbath first, and they're the first metal band. So like in a weird twist of fate, I'm whatever 14 years old or 13 years old in 2001, 2000. Yet somehow my first metal discovery is Black Sabbath, Paranoid, first album Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Heard those all three on the same day, front to back, and it was on, man. And that led me into Metallica, and then Slayer, and then Pantera. And from Pantera, I went into the underground stuff.
Yeah.
Discovered High on Fire, Trouble. All of my favorite doom bands have riffs, songs, melodies. It's memorable. It more closely resembles stuff like the origins of metal, like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. So like my favorite doom band is Trouble. Maybe Solitude Aeternus from Texas, Saint Vitus, bands like that. Pentagram. They had riffs, man. They had songs.
Mm-hmm.
And even before that, growing up in the South before the internet, I'm hearing a lot of old school country. I'm hearing Southern rock, like Creedence Clearwater Revival, Leonard Skinner. I'm driving around fucking tearing the town up listening to FM rock radio. So I'm hearing everything from Boston, Blue Oyster Cult, early Ozzy. Every once in a while I play a Metallica song. Tom Petty, Bob Seger, stuff like that. And that is what became my musical identity. I love extreme metal too. I love Dissection. I love Death. All kinds of stuff. Morbid Angel. But I think the common factor for me with like guitar oriented music is that it's catchy, it's memorable, it's powerful. There's songs, meaningful lyrics, melodies and harmonies, whether it's on the guitar or the vocals or whatever. And when I started Spirit Adrift, I was in a certain spot in my life. The music's reflective of that. I think all of my musical DNA is still represented. There's Judas Priest riffs in there. They're just real slow,
Yeah.
And it just, man, when we started to play live and started to get bigger tours and bigger crowds and bigger festivals, it's like, dude, I was just kind of I just don't stay satisfied. Like we were talking about with guitar playing a minute ago. Like I want to always evolve and keep myself entertained. And if that keeps other people entertained, that's cool. But I want to try to like write the best metal song ever written. That became the goal,
Yeah. I have a pretty deep question that I thought of on the hand here, and I don't know how to phrase it, so it's not disrespectful in any way, but
whatever you got to do, man.
No. Like you were just saying, like you want to write the best metal song of all time, right? What is what drives somebody, whether it's a musician or someone who's in a band, vocalist or whatever, to spend ungodly amounts of time on something that won't financially 99.9% of the time financially recoup their investment, their time investment? Like, what drives you to do that? Because obviously, like, you're in a band, right? Like you're in a like we were just talking about how it is sort of like a heavy metal band, but there's a ceiling for heavy metal too, and you're not like a heavy metal band. You're a little bit in the underground too. Like you straddle both worlds. So outside of just being a complete sellout and doing like, and again, no disrespect to Five Finger Death Punch or Disturbed or whatever, but like those guys are like, you would have to like be that kind of band to sell that kind of money, or to sell those records to get that kind of money.
Right.
So like what?
Hey, side note real quick, Dan Donegan from Disturbed came and saw us in Illinois, and he fucking loves us.
Oh, I mean the guy from Five Finger Death Punch is in a fucking Semi-Rotted. It's like another metal band. So yeah, they're not all into like just radio rock. I get it. They're not all bumping.
They're trying to pay their bills.
Exactly.
My bills are paid regardless of this music shit. I'm a fucking gangster, dude. I make sure the bills are paid. So I'm not tripping. Like
he's cooking meth in the basement, blue meth.
Maybe. Maybe.
But yeah, what's the drive behind that?
Well, dude, first of all our records have recouped. So
well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not
understand the question. It sounds like melodramatic, but I've been through a lot of shit in my life. My mom died when I was 4 months old, and that was the beginning of my life. And the shit did not cool down for a long time after that. So I went through a lot of serious shit, man. And I think when you go through serious shit like that, it turns you into like a seeker of the truth, you know. That's a Cro-Mag song. Those guys went through serious shit growing up, and it gets you turned on to this concept of like, what's the point of all this? Like, why do we exist? Why do I exist? Like, what happens when we die? Why does the earth exist? Like, I understand scientifically why it exists, but like, what the fuck? Like,
The
why is there
point.
something?
Yeah, what's the
Why is
point?
there something instead of nothing? And you start, dude, I remember being a fucking like 7 years old and doing math in my head of like, how long does a dog typically live? So I'll be this old when my dog dies. How long does a human typically live? So I'll be
Yeah.
hopefully this old when. That's fucked up to have to go through
Yeah.
that when you're a kid, man. And so it makes you really understand for real, not fucking some like motivational, weird, hippie, spiritual bullshit. It makes you understand for real that you got to figure out like what your purpose is, because life is really, really short, really short.
Yeah.
And my purpose is to fucking write sick riffs and play them. And that's it. And I don't question that. And whatever I got to do to keep doing that, I'll do it. If it means showing up at your house with a fucking 12 gauge and taking your shit, if I have to do that, I'll do it. You know, I haven't had to yet, but you know, there was some sketchy times in Arkansas,
Yeah.
where I was making ends meet. But yeah, dude, I love it. I love having like a crazy, unpredictable life. And yeah, it ain't about money. I never gave a fuck about money.
No,
ever.
no, I'm not.
Money is like the easiest thing. If you live in America and you can't make 6 figures a year, you are fucking up, because it's easy. It's easy. I'm not saying you have to do it like legally or whatever.
No, yeah. There's definitely
shit's
ways
easy.
to do it legally and illegally for sure.
Yeah,
You're not
dude.
100% wrong, especially with AI these days, guys. Not
Yeah,
that hard.
bro.
No, I ask that question because it is like you run into a lot of those types of individuals in our little world, even more so in like hardcore, where like the ceiling for hardcore is drastically lower than like any kind of metal or rock, ceiling is. So it's just interesting to find what drives, these individuals and like whatnot. But there's one thing I also wanted to ask you before we get too off topic of playing, and your current record and records you've put out in the past with Spirit Adrift. Is there or has there ever been a riff that you couldn't play well enough to not put on the record yet, or have you had to wait another like cycle so you could knock it out?
No, they all make it on the record. There has been a couple times. Is there and has there been a couple of times where I was like, man, I kind of want to play that song live, and then I start really thinking about what that entails with the vocals and playing and singing at the same time, where I haven't done it. But then it also, like, we play a song live called Harmony of the Spheres that when we recorded it, I was like, well, that one's never getting played live.
Yeah.
And we've been playing that at every show
Nice.
since COVID ended. And I just like, again, I love to push myself, man, and I did. And that's like one of our best, our most well received live songs for sure, and one of the most fun to play now that I actually can do it.
Yeah, that's funny. I wonder how many people realize that that's why you don't hear a lot of the songs that you don't hear live. It's because like they can only play it in the studio, and that's not a bad thing. It's just the person's pushed themselves to a certain level in the studio to where it's like that hard to play, and maybe in a live setting it is much harder to play it that way. I don't know.
Totally. And on this topic, we just played Hellfest with Iron Maiden and a bunch of other bands, and
Yeah, a bunch of other bands.
Dude, Hellfest is so fucking sick.
I
And
know.
we watched
I want to
Maiden.
go.
Oh my God, we watched Maiden like played at however 100,000 people, whatever, tens and tens of thousands of people, and man, they play some intricate stuff live for sure. But everybody's like singing the guitar parts, the vocal parts, everything. And our next record, my goal is writing a record that we could play front to back at Hellfest, and the whole time the crowd's just like going ape shit, knowing all the guitar parts, singing the guitar parts, singing the vocal parts, And I don't want to water anything down, but that's just, I want to write like the most epic fucking like Hellfest 500,000 people
Yeah.
type of like, just festival album. You know what I
Right.
mean? Do it our way. Um, Not there's some like sort of goofy Euro metal type versions of that. I want to avoid that, but yeah, I want to write a record that's just like, let's take this out and play the whole thing and just have people going ballistic the whole time.
Nice. Yeah, maybe on the next cycle, since you already have a record coming out that you
Yeah,
obviously.
and this
Yeah,
record's great, but it's totally different than
right,
that.
right,
This
right,
is
right,
like
right. That's
Southern
like a different
Gothic.
situation. Like that's like
Yeah,
a European crazy fucking festival, which
yeah.
we can get into
This is
that.
some like Southern funeral music.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if you've I don't know if you listen to any podcasts, but there's a podcast that Colin Young and Bo of Harmless
Mhm.
Way do, the Hard Lord podcast.
I know Colin.
Okay, yeah, they have a great segment on there, and I don't want to take from their podcast or anything like that, but they don't necessarily interview a lot of like metal type bands. They kind of are like a hardcore podcast, which is great.
Yeah, they need to get me on though, dude. Colin, quit fucking around and put me on the damn podcast.
He's been on this podcast, so
I
maybe
love
he'll
the dude,
maybe he'll watch
but
it. Yeah,
he's put me on there. It'd be a lot of fun.
start a beatdown hardcore band with just nothing but unga boonga breakdowns, and
I'll
I'm
have a
sure-
record done tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure
and
he'll
then he
put
can
you
put me on.
But they usually ask some of the questions about like fast food, which we won't talk about food on this podcast because I talk about it offline enough as is. But you do the singing, and you are a guitar player on the band. So like, what is the inspiration, whether it's vocally and playing style? Like, who do you try and I don't want to ask it exactly like the fucking they ask it, but like, who do you emulate, or who you try?
Oh,
to
who do I
emulate?
emulate? I don't like, this is gonna sound douchey, but I was like shooting to emulate certain people at certain phases of Spirit Adrift, and like the ultimate goal as a musician and especially as a singer is to find your own voice.
Yeah.
And obviously it's gonna be like a combination of all your biggest influences, but I've noticed on the last couple of things that we've recorded, I find myself not thinking of anybody else and not attempting to emulate anybody else, and just being cool with sounding like me. But I will say, like, I can talk about my influences for sure. Guys like Mustaine, he like really, to me, invented thrash metal, took the new wave of British heavy metal and just like injected it with more attitude, more technicality, more speed, more power, more everything. So he's a big influence. Hetfield and Hammett, obviously, two are both great riff writers and players. Dimebag Darrell is like a huge influence, fellow Southerner who sort of incorporates like honky tonk music, twangy stuff into his playing, but it's still super heavy. Kirk Winstein, who has become a really close friend. I actually just talked to him for like 45 minutes on the phone the other day.
Tell him he's welcome on the podcast.
Dude, I will. I love that motherfucker. He told me a lot. Speaking of Dimebag, he told me so many good Dimebag stories. It was incredible. Matt Pike's a big influence,
Nice, yeah.
riff wise, and obviously Tony Iommi is like ground zero for all that. As far as like songwriting, I really look up to guys like Tom Petty. Like, he just writing classic songs that really stand.
You
the test of
love that
time.
Florida stuff, bro.
Love it, dude. And yeah, like Chuck from Death, huge influence. And vocally, like, I know I don't sound like him, but like George Jones is very inspiring to me. What he's able to do with like the acrobatic nature of his voice and the dynamics and stuff. I love a lot of the old country guys, Merle Haggard and Waylon Jennings.
Yeah.
For metal, it's like Ozzy, Hetfield, Dio, Halford. I mean, those are the guys.
Yeah. I could see that. Last question, or last topic before I cut you loose here. You're from Florida. You lived in the South for a long period of time, if not most of your life. You've traveled quite a bit and extensively in the country and worldwide. I'll just ask you really quick, why is the South the best?
It's the people, man. But that's also why it's the worst. Some of the people are the worst,
Yeah.
but the other people are the best.
I just find that it's like whenever I travel, I don't know, maybe it's just because I am used to being here, but in the South. But it's just, I don't know.
People are real.
Yeah.
People are real.
It's hot. We don't have time to waste.
Bro, and you'll find that in other places, but what I love about the South is like what seems like its biggest flaws, boredom, like lack of entertainment, lack of like big city type stuff that you can do. That's actually like in hindsight kind of how I see it as having like its own that's a benefit, man, because you're forced to use your imagination.
Yeah.
You're forced to just like hang out and make connections with people and tell stories, figure out like outside of the box ways to entertain yourself. No one's going to bullshit you. Like, I've lived in cities. I lived in Santa Monica. I helped a guy build a studio, and it was in Malibu. It was like a home studio. And the only person that was real and that was nice to me while I lived in California was Mel Gibson. I'm not fucking kidding. Yeah. Like I was building this studio for this dude in Malibu, and a crazy motherfucker came running down the driveway like covered in paint. He's like, "Hey, what the hell are you guys doing down here? There's a lot of action going on." He reached his hand out, and I shook his hand, and it was Mel Gibson. He lived across the street.
Wow.
And everybody else except for him, and I know he's got like his sketchy shit, but I'm just speaking of my experience. He was the only real person that I met when I lived in LA. Everybody else was a fucking douchebag.
Yeah.
Douchebag. Like, everybody's got an angle. Everybody's like, there's just an artificial nature to it. And that is what it is. Some people like that. But I like the South because you're never going to get that. And I would rather like deal with somebody who's a fucking asshole, but you know that what they're saying and the way that they're acting is real. And that's how they really feel.
Yeah.
So that's why the South is the best. And we invented the blues, which became metal.
Yep.
We invented Southern rock, which is like arguably the coolest type of music there is.
It's not bad.
Invented country and bluegrass. I mean, fuck off. Like, all the Brits stole the blues shit and turned it into metal. So we invented it, man. It's ours.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I mean, I definitely, I would get, like you said, big cities, all the other stuff. Sometimes I would get jealous that, big music waves and movements didn't come from like where I grew up, right? It's all like this New York, hardcore came from New York, and it was such a big thing in that area, in the Northeast area. But then I think about it, and it's like you were saying, like how it might be a little more slow down here. Boredom might sneak in a little bit. You have to use your imagination. But the little pockets of quote unquote scene stuff that happens, underground music stuff that happens, I think it's more tight knit than those bigger cities, because it's like that's all these little communities have to hold on to. So like when you're in like rural Podunk State or rural area of wherever you live, and you're at a house or a venue and it's like 100 people in there, and that's blowing the top off that place, and it's like whatever. That's some of the coolest shit ever.
Yeah, man. That's why I loved Arkansas, dude. All my favorite like musical minds are in Arkansas. All my favorite musical personalities.
Yeah.
And Florida hardcore and Texas hardcore be like this, son.
Yeah.
And it's for that reason,
Yeah. It's crazy how Florida gets a bad rap, and I get that. And
so do we, man.
But I think I wouldn't live anywhere else. That's what I'll say.
Hell yeah. Respect, dude. I love it. You got to take the good and the bad, any situation that you're in.
And I'll tell you, the listener, there's far more fucking good than there's bad. Don't believe everything you say, or believe everything you hear on the internet, including what I say.
It's a magical place, man.
That's why the Disney's here, dude.
Yeah, hell yeah.
All right, Nate. It's been a great time with you. Hopefully, I don't know when you're coming through town again, but it's been a year, so maybe it won't be too long, especially you have another album coming out in a couple weeks, so I'm sure you got some tours lined up and things coming through the pipeline. But yeah, man, best of luck, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me on. And dude, I had the idea of reading the most hateful comments, just like how Kimmel did the fucking what celebrities
Oh no. We that's the thing we do, and we'll put it together and send it to you.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So we'll link up again, and you can record your. We'll talk about it off. We'll talk about it off the camera. But yeah, no, that's coming down the pipeline. All right.
Hell
cool.
Yeah, brother. Thanks, David.